So moving on to the next chapter, which is vulnerability scan. Now, as we have discussed in the previous chapters, the scanning process, the enumeration, the footprinting, all of these processes are used, or all of them are just for one thing, which is to gain access towards the system or into the system, basically. Now, whenever we need to gain an access to the system, we do have two different methods or three different methods, I say. The first method will be we can try to crack the password of the system. It's a possibility. And then the second one will be we can try to exploit the human link, or we can try to do the perform the social engineering attempt. And the third method will be we can try to exploit the vulnerabilities which is present in that particular system. That's what we can perform in the vulnerability analysis or the system attack process. Now, when it comes to vulnerability research or the analysis concept or the vulnerability analysis concept, the main and important concept we need to know is nothing but what is a vulnerability. Basically, every system in this world, or every system which we are creating, have some kind of securities with them. So they have a lot of securities. So these securities are very important, and these securities help us to prevent the attacks. But somehow or sometimes, these securities, as you know, these securities are also created by the humans or by persons such as us. So as the humans will make errors, it is very natural to make errors by the humans. So basically, every security system which they were trying to implement will be having some kind of flaws or some kind of security issues actually. And those security issues, which is called as vulnerabilities. And we as a team, or we as the ethical hackers, what we are trying to do is we'll be trying to perform nothing but we will be trying to attack into the system. We will be trying to do what? We will be trying to do nothing but we will be trying to get an access towards the system or get an access into the system. That's what we will be basically performing in the vulnerability research process. Now, as a security analyst or as a system administrator or an IT administrator, as an admin, basically, what we will be need to do is we need to research about new vulnerabilities, so that what we can perform is what we can attain is we can get to know about more latest vulnerabilities, latest attack techniques, latest concepts, all those kind of concepts about the vulnerabilities. So an administrator needs to do the vulnerability research just for nothing but to gather information about new security threats, new attack surfaces, new attack techniques, and to gather information to aid the prevention of security issues and to know how to recover from a cyber attack, and etc. etc. So as you can see in the screen in that slide, sorry.
Can you please increase your mic volume a little bit?
It's the maximum voice, I think.
Okay.
Is it very low?
No, it's kind of coming out of blurry. So I thought I'll check on my side. No problem.
Okay. I actually, due to the continuous sessions, my throat has some problems. Maybe that is the cause. Anyway, I will try to increase my volume.
No, sir. No problem, sir.
Yeah. And the thing, the screen which you can see in front of you have 12 different websites, in which all these websites will help us to gain some information or gain some knowledge about vulnerabilities. That's what basically we can do with this kind of websites. Actually, we have about 12 websites. 12 different websites are listed here, and which is in detail listed in the student notes also. You can go ahead and refer to them. So all these websites are very useful for vulnerability research process or vulnerability analysis process, because the vulnerability analysis or the vulnerability research process needs some resource. Actually, we need to collect information, right? We need to collect information, or we need to try to gather information, and these information can be collected from these various websites. Now, basically, to identify the vulnerability, we need to perform the assessment. We need to perform vulnerability assessments, and these assessments are very important. And what are these assessments, or what are the vulnerability assessment? So basically, vulnerability assessment is nothing but it is the in-depth examination of the ability of a system or application, including the current security procedures and control, to withstand an exploitation or to withstand a cyber attack. So let's consider this way. You are performing a cybersecurity assessment on a system, and why we are doing this? to find out the vulnerabilities. And why we need to find out the vulnerabilities? We need to prevent the attackers, or we need to prevent the bad guys from getting into our systems or from stealing our data. So that's what we basically need to do. And now, by doing assessment, what we are not only finding out new vulnerabilities, we are also examining the prevention methods they have implemented in their particular system or their particular network. So the implementation of those concepts also are also very important. The implementation of the current security procedures or the current security systems in their network, in their environment, all of them are very, very important. So these concepts are very important. Now we will be performing assessments to find out the vulnerabilities in the existing security policies and the existing security infrastructure also. Now, in the assessment process, it is very important to give a final report to the client. And who is our client? We need to give a final assessment report to them. And whenever we are giving a final assessment report to our client, the client need to verify all of these assessments, and the client need to verify what? The client need to verify all of these vulnerabilities, and they need to patch these vulnerabilities. They need to remove these vulnerabilities from their network and from their system. It is very, very important. Now, these concepts can be identified by a client with a very far better, because they are not a cybersecurity specialist, or they are not experts in cybersecurity. So they will not be able to understand by reading out the name of a vulnerability how much critical is it, how much severe is it. So to give them an idea about the severity of a vulnerability, we will score them on the basis of a CVSS method, so on the basis of a CVSS guidelines, which is called a Common Vulnerability Scoring System, which is created by the first. I will show you the CVSS calculator. So this is the calculator. This is the CVSS calculator basically. Now there are various factors they are about to ask. These are the factors actually. The factors such as attack vector, attack complexity, the privileges required, user interaction, scope, confidentiality, integrity, availability. So these concepts. So all of them are questions about the vulnerability. Now we do have a vulnerability with us. Now we need to score them, and we will be asking questions. So what is the attack vector of this particular vulnerability? What are the attack complexity of this particular vulnerability? And do we need a user interaction here? Do we need some privileges here? And is it a in-scope vulnerability? Is the exploitation of the vulnerability will cause an in-scope problem or an out-of-scope problem? And what is the confidentiality impact? What is the integrity impact? What is the availability impact? So these kind of questions will be there for each and every vulnerabilities. And on the basis of the answers we are giving, the CVSS calculator will give us a score here. And this score will help our client to understand much more better how severe this vulnerability is. So there are five different classifications basically. And those classifications are none, low, medium, high, and critical. These are the 5 different classifications. And the none ranges from 0.0, and low ranges from 0.1 to 3.9, medium ranges 4.0 to 6.9, high 7.0 to 8.9, and the critical 9.0 to 10.0. The critical are very, very critical vulnerabilities, and it will cause our system a very big problem. So that's what basically the severity problem. So by using the severity, what we can do is, by using the severity or by finding out the severity, we will be able to identify the problems with the vulnerability, the cause of this vulnerability, and the client will be able to understand how severe is it and how much time and how much workforce I need to spend on this particular vulnerability. That's what we will be identifying by the CVSS calculator. Then the concept of CVE, or the Common Vulnerability Enumeration, Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, with this CVE, it is basically a database. The CVE is basically a database. I'll show you the CVE. This is the CVE, as you can see in the screen. This is the CVE. So in this database, what we can identify is, we can identify the vulnerabilities of various products. The products, for example, such as WhatsApp is a product, the Facebook is a product. So those kind of products, we can try to identify. Am I audible? Hello?
Sorry, your voice is breaking, sir.
Somehow my mic was muted. Now I'm audible, right?
Yeah, sir, you're audible now.
Yeah, accidentally I muted my mic. Sorry.
Yeah, actually, it is.
Sorry. So Okay, so basically it is CVE. The CVE is nothing but it is a list of, it's a curated list of vulnerabilities in products. In products such as we can say the products such as WhatsApp is a product, basically Facebook is a product, and what we can say the SQL is a product, such as, sorry, not SQL, MySQL is a product, PostgreSQL is a product. So those kind of products are there, and we can try to identify, we can get to know about the various vulnerabilities in these products from the CVE list. So we can search here in the CVE list, and let's search for the WhatsApp itself. WhatsApp, just search WhatsApp here, and now you can see various vulnerabilities in WhatsApp in the CVE results. So these are the vulnerabilities in WhatsApp product. As you can see, these are the vulnerabilities in the WhatsApp product. So there are various vulnerabilities are there in WhatsApp, and you can see these are the various kind of vulnerabilities in WhatsApp. So which may be disclosed in 2020 or 2021. So you can see various kind of vulnerabilities, and by finding out the vulnerabilities on a specific version of WhatsApp or some other software, we will be able to exploit the software using this vulnerability. So the CVE will help us to exploit a software or to find out a vulnerability, and using this kind of information in the CVE list or CVE database. And the CVE database is maintained by the NVD or the National Vulnerability Database, or the National Vulnerability Database, or the NVD. So this is the NVD. NVD is maintained by the US government. It is a repository of US government, and where they will manage and store the various kind of vulnerabilities and all. So this is a very good source. And the CWE, or the Common Weakness Enumeration, which is another database in which we will be focusing on only one thing. In the Common Weakness Enumeration, we will be focusing on vulnerability. And in CVE, we were focusing on products, the vulnerabilities in a product. But in CVWE, or the Common Weakness Enumeration, we will be focusing on vulnerabilities, not on products. We will be focusing on products in the CVE, and we'll be focusing on the vulnerabilities in CWE. For example, the different type of SQL injection, different type of SQL vulnerabilities, and the reason for those vulnerabilities. So those kind of information will be there in the CWE, or in the Common Weakness Enumeration. In CVE, it is all about the product. So these are the very good resources for a vulnerability research. Now, moving on to the next one, which is Vulnerability Management Lifecycle, which is VMLC, Vulnerability Management Lifecycle. Now, in the Vulnerability Management Lifecycle, what happens is there is 6 phases in the Vulnerability Management Lifecycle. The 6 phases are from the first one, identify assets and create a baseline. That's the first phase. And then vulnerability scanning phase, then risk assessment phase, remediation phase, verification phase, and the last one, which is monitoring phase. So there are 6 different life cycles, 6 different cycles are there in the VMLC. Now the first phase, which is also categorized into 3 different phases, also there's a pre-assessment phase, assessment phase, and post-assessment phase. In the pre-assessment phase, which is the creating baseline phase, what we will be doing is we will be performing an inquiry. We'll be performing an inquiry, or we'll be performing a local scanning in the network, and we will be identifying various products there. So what are the how much computer is there, how much routers are there, how much switches are there. So those kind of information will be collected from this the baseline creation phase. And after finding out the devices or the nodes in the network, we will prioritize them on the basis of their criticality or their severity. So if it is a very important device, we will be scanning it first of all, and then we will be placing it in the first position of the scanning list actually. Then we will be creating the inventory. Then we will be collecting details about the policies they are following, the security policies they have implemented, their security infrastructure, their guidelines such as ISO, if there is any kind of ISO 27001 systems or any kind of PCI DSS implementation. So those kind of information. So we will be collecting information about the network, and we will be prioritizing them. And after that, after completing the creating baseline, we do have a very solid plan, and we do have the list of devices of this particular network. Now in the vulnerability assessment phase, what happens is in the vulnerability assessment phase, we do have a plan, we do have the list of devices, we do have everything with us. Now what happens in the next phase, which is vulnerability assessment